So hello, my name is Toby Mendelson, and this is a very brief introduction video which is meant to be a kind of segue into a much longer podcast on the topic. And the topic is generally Aristotle, but more particularly Aristotle's ethics and politics. And what I want to do is propose that Aristotle's ethics and politics is deeply critical in our current epoch, even though he's an ancient thinker. So why is this? Why am I making that kind of proposition? Well, there's basically a key argument here, and the argument is Aristotelian ethics and politics represent a very powerful way, and I think a very practical way, to overcome the all-encompassing instrumentality of our present epoch. So, what do I mean by instrumentality? I mean a kind of consequentialist, cost-benefit, economic kind of logic which is applied to all domains of our lives. So, certainly our economic lives, but also our personal lives, and our political lives, our social lives, and our work lives. Now, I think it's certainly true that there's a place for instrumental thinking or instrumental rationality in our lives, in certain domains, in certain situations. But it's also the case, I think, that it's gone far too far, that it's become all-encompassing, something like a beast which has taken over all things. And I want to use one example to kind of demonstrate this point, which is sort of a rough analogy. And it's an analogy which helps us to understand the way that Aristotelian ethics can be used to overcome this beast of rationality or instrumental rationality. And the analogy is in the domain of food. So, around 20 or 30 years ago, I think we were more or less entirely instrumental in the way that we dealt with food and diet. Which means to say that we went in for the quickest, the cheapest, and the most efficient options for our eating. That meant the rise of fast food, of mass-produced processed food, of factory farming, and all these sorts of things. And we realized that that kind of approach is not only extremely detrimental to our personal health, but also to the environment and to our overall well-being. And that more than that, it fundamentally disrespects the art of cooking and the joy of eating. And so since that time, we've had something of a foodie revolution, which implies sort of a fundamental change in the way that we grow and produce and cook and eat and enjoy food. And there's a sort of an artisan logic which goes alongside this. And this is very much expressive of the Aristotelian notion or concept of arete, a striving for excellence in our cooking techniques, in our growing techniques. Instead of eating merely as a means to fill our bodies, elevating it to the level of an aesthetic experience. So in our age, chefs have become like pop stars. They're incredibly famous. And eating out is like going to the theatre. It's sort of a highly elevated aesthetic experience. Now, obviously, I think we can go too far with all of that. But as a rough analogy, I think it works very well to demonstrate the connections between overcoming instrumentality and what might be used to replace it. So, the key point is that we now get a kind of holistic relationship between well-grown fresh produce and well-cooked food and a consistent good diet, and how this results in our overall well-being, or in Aristotelian language, an increase in our capacity to have eudaimonia, a flourishing existence. So I think all of that is very much on an Aristotelian kind of template. A rejection of the instrumentality of fast food, of factory farming and so forth, for a more holistic approach which sees the relationship between habits and virtues and the cultivation of, in this case, a good physical character. So, that's all well and good. It does, however, raise rather a serious question or a serious problem, which is perhaps this only goes as far as food and diet. In that we get rid of the instrumentality of food, our relationship to food. But we haven't extended this concept of arete, of excellence, to other domains of our lives, to our moral lives, to our emotional lives, to our social lives, to our work lives, and to our political lives. So really what I'm trying to suggest is that in the same way that the Aristotelian kind of logic has revamped our relationship to food and eating, so too must we do something similar on those other domains, our work lives, our social lives, and I think especially our political lives. So, that's all I'll say now. It's obviously a very rough analogy there, but I think that gives you enough of a kind of template which might tempt you into a deeper engagement with the issue. And you can certainly do that via the podcast we've linked here at the bottom of the page. So please have a listen to that if you're interested. And we also have courses here at Arete House which traverse roughly similar terrain. So you can find the links for those underneath. That's all I'll say for now. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next time.